Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can we perhaps we can just come in from the back? That'd be great. Welcome back. It's great to see you all, and I have to say it's been a really good morning. Actually, I've been hugely impressed by the sessions that I've been part of, and the conversations that have been going on around and about. So this afternoon, though, is an opportunity for you to ask, or you to hear the panel, the esteemed panel I have in front of me, answer questions that you've put in, that they're your questions, that they're either received online or put into the box in the room we've just come from. We've tried to turn them into themes, so hopefully you'll recognise your questions in here somewhere. If there are other questions that you want to ask, you can still send them in online, but I think we've got plenty here, and we will try and answer the questions post this event as well. So I'm going to start really by just asking the panel to introduce themselves. And I should introduce myself. I'm Gary Shaughnessy. I'm chair of Parkinson's UK. I have 3 children, and I have one wife. I'm very pleased it's in that ratio. My family have been brilliant with me, actually, ever since I was diagnosed 10 years ago, coming up to 10 years ago. They've been really superb. I'm a double world record holder. Yeah, I'm not going to explain what's in because it sounds more impressive if I just leave it as is. And I'm also going to get my first cap for Ireland on Tuesday. And again, I won't explain what that's in as well because it sounds more impressive if I just leave it as that. So I'd like to hand over next to Caroline, who will introduce herself.
Thank you, Gary. What Gary didn't tell you is that he's only got the Ireland camp because the England team rejected him. And he's got the questions. Why did I do that? Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see you. I'm Caroline, and I'm the Chief Executive here at Parkinson's UK. I've been here now for 3 years. It's been 3 incredible years. The best part is you. I absolutely get my energy and my passion from coming out and meeting people in this amazing community. So I am a proud member of the women's only walking football team, the Parkinson's Pioneers. There are some pioneers in the room. And that's been an incredible experience for me. And it was great this morning to hear women being mentioned and women with Parkinson's. What's incredible is that camaraderie and the fact that when you get on a football pitch, everything is equal. And that's a great grounding. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm also a great park runner. And I've got over, I think, 50 colleagues from Parkinson's UK here today, and an email went round offering the opportunity to come to Park Run with me tomorrow in Leeds. And do you know how many of the 50 said yes? The one gentleman there, my hero, Ben. But if anybody would like any details of where Ben and I are running Park Run tomorrow, please just let me know. And that's me.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm not sure about this idea that when you play football, all things are level as far as teams. I'm sure there's a few people in the audience who would disagree with that. But David.
Hi there. So I'm David Dexter. So I'm the research director. Hopefully you were in my talk this morning. So I've been at Parkinson's UK about 7.5 years now. So I come from Imperial College, an academic background, but I've had a long association with the charity. They actually funded my PhD many years ago. When I was a youngster. And then I set up the Parkinson's UK Brain Bank at Imperial in 2002. So it was a great honour and privilege to come and work for the charity now.
And did you pay back your 17 guineas?
In overtime, yes.
Thanks, Dave. Camille.
Hi everybody again. I'm Camille Carroll. I'm a neurologist, academic neurologist based at Newcastle University, but also University Hospitals Plymouth, because Plymouth was my previous academic home. And I am also the co-clinical director of the Parkinson's Excellence Network, and delighted to be working more closely with Parkinson's UK and the charity. I have one husband and 4 children, and I just want to highlight that I also have benefited very much from family support whilst on my own Parkinson's mission, which has been the last 20 years. So delighted to be here.
Thanks, Camille. And Emma.
Hi there, my name's Emma Edwards. I'm a Parkinson's specialist nurse in Plymouth, and I cover West Devon as well. I have about 700 people on my caseload. Going grey rapidly. I'm also a mental health nurse and have been since, I think it was the second day after my 18th birthday. My mother put me in the local mental hospital to work on a dementia care ward. And I haven't really sort of left that, and really enjoyed my mental health training, and it's been really helpful. I'm also, I work with Spotlight YOPD, which is a really fantastic charity that supports young onset people with Parkinson's. And actually I've just been promoted.
You have?
To Deputy CEO. So that's, I don't actually know what that entails.
Neither do I.
Caroline says it does.
I just thought it made you sound good.
I like it. I'll collect that title. Yeah. So that's me.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emma. And over to you, Carl.
So I'm Carl. Most people call me Beechy, unless I'm in trouble. I was born in Dagenham, or as we prefer to say, Dargenham, because it gives us an air of sophistication. I've got one wife, two adult daughters. One is a vet, and the other one's a tattoo artist. I don't know how that happened. How does that happen? Now, I've got a dog that thinks he's a wolf, but is actually a Cavapoo, and he's 75% toy poodle. I've got a cat called Spencer. I like chimpanzees and ducks. I'm CEO of Spotlight, and I spent 30 years working in areas of deprivation. So my day job is pioneering a new work in the cobalt mines in Congo and UK deprivation, but increasingly involved in Parkinson stuff. I just set up a new company called Beech. That's me.
Very good. Why chimpanzees and ducks?
I think they're amazing. Chimpanzees are incredible, and ducks are the ultimate animal. They can fly, go underwater, swim, and they permanently smile.
And they taste nice.
And they taste nice.
And they taste nice.
Yeah, and they taste amazing. And that is true. They are the ultimate animal. He just turned my mic off.
I didn't expect to get into those kind of questions in this session.
Sorry.
But, we can come back to chimpanzees and ducks at the end if we get through all the questions. So I've got some questions to start with, and is Jane Rideout here? Hi, Jane. You asked a question earlier, and we talked about taking that question and making it a little bit more precise and getting an answer from the panel. And the question really was, I'll paraphrase and hopefully I get it right, Jane, but at the end of a trial period where someone's had maybe 3 years of taking a particular drug, they may feel that that's had a very beneficial effect for them. But whilst the scientists are going to evaluate the results, people are taken off those drugs that could be helpful to them until the end of the evaluation period, before they then can potentially get them again if it's successful. And couldn't we do something to change that? And I think the answer, Camille, I'll paraphrase it as well, is we can do, but it's kind of individual. And I guess, Caroline, the question for you is, does it have to be individual to negotiate that, or shouldn't that be something that Parkinson's UK could step into the breach?
You're challenged me against two eminent clinicians, so I'm slightly worried. I think Parkinson's UK ultimately is here as a membership organisation to support what the members want. Actually, if this is something that the membership are saying, we'd really like you to ask the questions and push on and find out why, so that where it is possible, as Carmel said, in some cases it may be possible, it does happen, and where it isn't possible, at least you know why. So I think we've got an opportunity to listen and hear, and if that's something that you would like us to campaign more on, or actually to work out who are the people that we need to influence to have that discussion, then that would be and should be something that we respond to, so that the information is at least out there for the community and everybody goes into a trial with a very clear understanding of what is going to happen and what isn't going to happen. And, you know, I'd be very happy to say that's something that we can push further if that's what the membership would like.
I mean, it certainly seems to me unfortunate if someone is dependent on their consultant to push their case for them. So, Jane, does that help answer or extend the answer to your first question? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very clear in the study that they're not going to get out of it, but it's one thing to take that before they start, and you have to drive into work with it. It's very hard to take
Yeah.
You do want to say something?
Yeah.
David wants to say something.
Okay. So with the last Conservative government, we had quite good negotiations. We'd moved along. So we were asking if we could make Parkinson's an accelerated access partnership. So just like it was in COVID times, so you remember, COVID was there, they were doing all the clinical trials, the trial closed, and the next day they were approving the drug. So because the regulators were looking at the trial data as it was coming out live. And so if we can engage with the new government, the new Labour government, to get the same accelerated access partnership, as trials that are coming out, like from the ACT PD programme, they'll be looking at that data live. So as soon as the data is closed and we can see a difference, they would go on to that drug, almost immediately from the trial. So that is one way we could actually speed up and reduce that gap or eliminate it a little bit there. Yeah.
And then just to add to that, if I may, Gary, so David's touched on an important point, and that's the pathway to impact. So we always need to plan for success, of course, and if we do have a drug that is shown to be effective, we can't then start thinking about how we're going to get it into the care just from the point of getting the result. We're starting to think about that now. What are the data that the regulators need to see? Are we collecting those data? We're having conversations with the regulators, always planning for success to streamline the process through to market access and thinking about what that route might be. It's quite a complex system to navigate, as you can imagine, getting a medicine into the NHS and prescribable for a particular indication. So having those conversations early and planning those into the start of the study, not just something that you think about at the end.
Good, I think that makes sense. And I think did you want to, can we just get a microphone down to this gentleman here, please? In the...
Mark,
sorry.
Yeah, I think it's an extremely important point taken up by Parkinson's UK. As a participant in the Pro-Duodopa trial, I've not only been a trialist, but I also gave evidence at NICE. And it's pretty nerve-wracking. But for me, the greatest fear was to take this away from me. That was absolutely a frightening prospect, because it changed my life. It hopefully changed many more people's lives. So for the charity to focus on, can we give continuity in terms of participants, and can we have a stronger voice in the regulatory framework, the approval process as well?
Yeah, can I pick that up? So thank you, Mark. And I know, because a couple of people from the community have contacted me directly about the fact that they've been told that they're eligible, but there is a huge waiting list. And it's a really interesting position to be in, because for the first time, I'm sure many of you would have seen the social media that the NHS put out around what the the device can actually do and how it can change people's lives. They put that out knowing that there actually wasn't enough nurses trained to be able to administer the device, because of course they don't have to then deal with what do the patients do? So that's definitely something that we've already fed back, but those kinds of things just shouldn't happen because that is unfair to everyone that's involved.
Brilliant.
Can I follow up on that as well? No, you're absolutely right, Mark. So I've been involved in some follow-up work regarding pro-duodopa specifically, trying to understand what the challenges are in services trying to implement the therapy across the UK, and the challenges are different in different sorts of organisations. But this is a therapy that the trial took place. People continue to have access even when the trial ended, so those weren't the problems. It was approved by NICE, that wasn't a problem. It was then commissioned by NHS England, that wasn't the problem. The barrier has been implementation in a service, that services need to get new infrastructure in place, the workforce need to learn new skills, there's more manpower requirements. So even though all of those regulatory hurdles have been overcome, there's still an implementation challenge, and that's where Parkinson's UK is and has been lobbying very effectively, because what we need to have our eye on is the next therapy that's going to come through that might be more challenging to deliver than a tablet. A tablet, of course, is quite easy to implement. You can prescribe it and people can take it. But where you need new infrastructure to be in place, that takes some planning. And what we'd like to see is that planning takes place in parallel to the approval process, not wait for the drug to be approved and then start to think about how we're going to implement it in services. So you're absolutely right. There are conversations still to be had on that point.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I'll move on because I think we do need to move on to the other questions, but I think that's been really helpful. I've noticed that Andy Hobbs has just arrived. I'd just like you to clarify something, Andy. You're the treasurer, I think, for the England Parkinson's Golf Society, is that right?
That is right.
And you're welcoming all applications from other golfers in the England area. Just yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, good. So it would be scurrilous for someone to say that I'd been rejected.
Andy, remember, you like me more than you like Anne.
That's enough, Andy, thanks. Right, so second question. This one's to David. The question is, it's frustrating that when we do take part in research, it takes so long for results to be published, and the progress that we make seems so slow. Will there be a cure in my lifetime?
I think it depends on your definition of cure. I think, what's realistic in somebody's lifetime is to identify something that is going to slow Parkinson's progression. And I think you saw the talks this morning that Camille did. There's lots of drugs coming through the different phases of trials. So the more horses that we've got in the race, the more chances of picking the winner. So the more chances that we can get those going through the trials, the more chances we've got one of those that's coming through to slow it down. I think it's going to be a combination therapy. It's going to be like HIV management. There's not one drug that stops HIV in its tracks. It's a combination therapy. So I think the first one that's going to come along is going to slow it down, and then you're going to combine it with another one which will slow it down even further. So I think in our lifetime, yes, I think we're going to see something that's coming through, and I think it's in the, in my frame about a cure, it's slowing it down so we can see. But don't forget, we've got now the biomarkers which can pick people up many years before they're developing the clinical symptoms. So next year, there's a thing called Pathways to Prevention, which the Michael J. Fox and we're supporting, are actually launching next year. So these are prevention trials. So through the biomarkers, they're identifying people who have a very high risk of developing Parkinson's, within the next 7 to 10 years. And so there are a number of drugs which are being discussed in that program. And the idea is that hopefully if we put them in early enough, there's less cells that have died in the brain that they're going to cause Parkinson's ultimately. And hopefully we might be able to knock people off that trajectory. And then that might be what other people might term a cause of actually stopping it clinically altogether.
And David, what are we as Parkinson's UK specifically doing? What's the real? I think the question was, you know, there's a big problem out there. What are we doing to accelerate the time to make the changes and have a cure, or make it easier for people to live their lives with Parkinson's?
Yeah. So. Yeah, with the ACT-PD platform trial, we're going to be testing drugs quicker. So we've funded 1.8 million into that trial, amongst the other partners. So that is going to radically accelerate the way we're testing. So recently, on the 23rd of September, we launched the Landmark project. So phase 2 and phase 3 and failing. You know, that's taken a huge amount of what we call preclinical work in the laboratory, and then also all of that clinical testing over the years. And that, if a drug is going to fail, we need to spot it earlier. Now, Landmark is going to use the brain bank samples, and it's going to really revolutionize the way that we think about Parkinson's. It's going to give us really useful information about what are the right mechanisms to target new drugs at. So this is why the pharmaceutical companies have partnered with us on this project, because anything in their drug pipeline will be able to look at in the Landmark data and say, is this the right target? Is this the right drug that we should be moving forward into the clinic? So we should be able to really speed things up quite dramatically there.
Brilliant. And can I just add to that, Camille? You had your presentation about MAMS earlier on. That's going to take 1,600 people, I think. Are there enough people? Is that going to take the available supply of people with Parkinson's out to the market?
Sadly not. I say sadly not because, as we know, there are about 155,000 people living with Parkinson's currently in the UK. As we heard from Shafak this morning, Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. That number is going to increase dramatically over the next 5-10 years, which is the time frame that we're looking for in order to get a drug to impact on rate of progression. So sadly, there will continue to be many, many more people with Parkinson's than taking part in our study, or indeed all studies. We know that only a very small percentage of people with Parkinson's take part in trials, probably around 5% or less. So no, there are plenty of potential participants for studies, and to shift the dial towards finding a cure in our collective lifetime, we need as many people as possible to take part in studies so that we recruit quickly, find the answers quickly, and move on to the next thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'll take that, and it is slightly downbeat when we talk about the challenge of getting people to participate. So I'll move to another idea. Carl, this one was specifically for you. Okay. Everyone is on their own journey with varying support. And this is the questioner rather than me, although I do get the same view, I get the impression that you get the most from life despite Parkinson's disease. How do you stay positive when you meet someone with a negative outlook?
I ignore them. Generally.
I'll ignore that.
I'm an optimist. I have been all my life. And I think that's a discipline. The joy and optimism are choices. You have to make those choices, and if you do, and then it follows you. And I just try to live my life that way. I've spent 30 years living in some of the poorest communities that exist, and visiting hellholes, trying to make a difference. And if you are negative, you'll get nowhere. So I just try and do things one bit at a time, one step forward. But I don't live in denial. You know, this is a terrible disease. I have some awful days. But so it's the overall trajectory. So if I meet someone who's being negative, I tell them to go and put themselves in the corner and give themselves a talking to, and then we have a little chat about it. And I just try and help people. I spend a lot of time with people, one-to-one, and just try and help them process why. But it is a discipline you have to put into your life, I think.
I would agree with that. I mean, I do think it isn't about denial, and it's not about just
we have to be real,
ridiculously positive about everything. But if you take a negative view of what has happened and is going to happen, then you'll be right. If you take a positive view about what you can do about it, then you've got a chance to be right.
Yeah, I fundamentally believe that things can be better, and that ultimately, people can be good. And I think if you carry that, people tend to become better versions of themselves around you. So, and certainly people around me, I try to surround myself with positive people. So that has a big impact on you, doesn't it, I think?
Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. Emma.
Go on.
If I'm struggling with balance, high intensity exercise like dance, cycling or running, how can I make exercise work for me?
Okay, so you're already doing it, or?
Well, we'd like to see Gary do a dance, because I understand that's your favourite form of exercise.
It's not my favourite form of exercise, although I have signed up to do the a dance session online. I think it's Thursday of next week, so that's going to be interesting.
Let's all go and watch.
Yeah.
I will be doing it off camera.
Not now.
For those who don't know me, my wife is a dance teacher, and we've been married for 36 years. She spent 36 years trying to teach me to dance, and she's a brilliant dance teacher and has failed miserably. So it's just not going to happen.
So I know when I've spoken to people like Fiona Lindop and Julie Jones, who we saw this morning, it's about finding, maybe not phrasing it as exercise. Personally, I go the opposite direction when someone says, "Would you like to exercise with me?" But if there's a pub at the end, perhaps I'll change my mind. But perhaps rephrasing it to an activity, and it needs to be something that you really like doing. I think if you are not into dancing or chair aerobics, you're just going to be miserable doing it. So I think it's finding something that you enjoy, and it may be, and I certainly find when I do activity, doing it with other people is preferable to doing it on my own, where I'll probably get sidetracked and put the TV on and sit down. So it's about doing something I think that you love, maybe doing it with somebody that will kind of gee you along. But I think it needs to, we know the importance of it in Parkinson's, so it's about incorporating it into your daily life and making it part of your life.
I think that's absolutely fair, and it's amazing actually. I mean, looking at Jagdeep here and others around the audience, the number of people who are doing very different types of exercise, and it's not as if there's a shortage of opportunity to do things, is there? Good, thank you for that. Right. Who next? I bet the difficult questions are left at the back of the pack. Camille, can someone explain the genetics of passing on Parkinson's to my son?
Yes.
Right. So next question.
So the risk of passing on any condition to one's offspring would depend exactly on what the genetic cause is. We know that in Parkinson's there are some rare genes which we would call autosomal dominant, and that would mean that if a child inherits one of those copies from either parent, then they're at increased risk of having Parkinson's. There are other genes in Parkinson's which we call autosomal recessive, and in order for a person to develop Parkinson's having one of those genes, they would need to inherit 2 copies, so 1 from each parent. And all of those sort of genetic conditions are quite rare, actually, in Parkinson's. The other complication, even with those genes, is that not everyone carrying those genes will develop Parkinson's in a predictable way, and we call that penetrance. So if a gene is 100% penetrant, then you will develop the condition, but a lot of genes aren't, because other things modify the ability of that gene to cause the disease. For most people with Parkinson's, it becomes more complicated because, as I said, there are very rare types of Parkinson's where there's that sort of clear-cut inheritance. More often, people are inheriting a susceptibility to Parkinson's. And even the genes that we understand are more causative, in inverted commas, so the LRRK2 mutation, which accounts for about 3% in the UK population, or the GBA mutation, which I mentioned this morning, which accounts for about 10%. There are many different changes in those genetic sequences, some of which are more penetrant or more likely to cause Parkinson's disease than others. So it depends exactly what the nature of the change is and also what the rest of one's genetic makeup is. Having said that, we all inherit stuff from our parents, of course, and that inherits the suite of conditions that we're likely to develop as we get older. So if our parents have osteoarthritis or diabetes or blood pressure problems or high cholesterol or whatever it is, then we are at increased risk of that ourselves, and the same holds true for Parkinson's. So if you do have Parkinson's, then your first-degree relatives are at a slightly higher risk of having Parkinson's than non-first-degree relatives, and that just reflects the fact that we are genetically similar to our parents and our children.
And that's needs to lead on to the question I was going to ask you, Emma, because you know, as someone with Parkinson's, I obviously think, will there be a chance that my children have Parkinson's? You know, am I more likely to have given them that inheritance than not? How do you deal with that?
I do get asked that question quite a lot, actually. So I provide a similar but very, very shorter answer than Camille gave there. So there are ways of looking at sort of genetic testing, and there's various ways that can be delivered. But it's not for everyone. You know, some people are quite frightened to know that if they've got a particular a genetic type of Parkinson's, that they'll pass that on. The family might not want to know anyway and live with that when there's no cure currently. But then there's the other way of looking at it, that if there is a treatment that can be sort of given when someone doesn't have any symptoms but perhaps, you know, have this issue, that they'll be perhaps first in line to be on a trial. So there's pros and cons of knowing if there is that genetic disposition. So it's a lot of reassurance. There's a lot of counselling if people do go for genetic testing as well, and I think that is really, really necessary. And there's some trials as well that will do that for you.
Thank you.
I have a quick follow-up. So just on that reassurance point, so our lifetime risk, any of us as individuals, of developing Parkinson's is 1 in 47. So even if we had a doubling of that risk, it would be 2 in 47. So you're still much more likely as a child or a first-degree relative of somebody with Parkinson's to not inherit the condition or to develop the condition than otherwise. And I think that's, you know, it's important to be reassuring.
Yeah.
And I think there's a slight silver lining to this, because if you know what the gene mutation is and how it causes Parkinson's, it's far easier to design a drug to stop it. And in fact, there are drugs being trialled that tackle the people with LRRK2 mutations and GBA mutations in trial at the moment. So whilst they are unlucky that they've got a rarer gene mutation, you know, they're probably going to be some of the first beneficiaries of drugs which are going to slow Parkinson's, because, you know, you're much more certain to develop something that will stop it if you know that there is a gene involved in it.
Okay. So let's.
Sorry, can I just?
Sorry, Jagdeep.
quickly just answer?
Did you just wait till the?
sorry.
To the. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask. Is that working?
Yep. Can you hear him at the back?
I wanted to ask an add-on question to the genetics. So I did the PD frontline beginning, so I think it was 67 known genes, and guess what, I was cleared. Great. But a month's time, RAD 32 came out. Another gene. So how do we know that we're going to get more genes? And how will I know, because I PD frontline to retest me if I had that gene. So we know that genes can keep on getting created. So, yeah.
So who wants to answer that? So it's the
Yeah,
detail of the genetic.
No, you're absolutely right. So the answer, I guess, is a bit where your sample is stored and for what purpose you have consented for it to be used, I guess, and also whether you've consented for results to be fed back to you. So PD Frontline, as I mentioned, works off a saliva sample, and it tests specifically for LRRK2 and GBA mutations. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't then test in a more extensive way, whereas another genetic testing platform which is ongoing, GP2, which is a global genetic testing initiative, does test for a much broader panel of genes, and the sample is then stored for additional analyses. Some of these will filter through into clinical practice, so a lot of these new genes, as they're discovered, will be on research panels. The panels that come through for clinical practice, the tests have to be obviously quality assured, that they work in a reliable way, and the laboratories delivering those panel tests work to appropriate specifications for use within the NHS. But the panel of genes that you would be tested for if you had an NHS genetic test is ever expanding as new genes sort of bubble to the surface and we become aware of them. And then, of course, we can improve our understanding of the number of people who might be affected by those susceptibility genes, and also whether those genes start to change the way that Parkinson's affects people.
Okay, thanks very much. Caroline, let's go from the science to the reality of today. Some people are struggling to see their consultants even once a year, and we've seen that in quite large areas actually over the last couple of years. What are you doing to improve access to care?
There are a few people in the audience. I'm going to look over at Vivian and her crew from East Sussex, who are wearing a charter badge. So what are Parkinson's UK doing? We have, as some of you know, we've partnered with the second best podcast, because clearly the best podcast, Dave and Kuhan, are in the room, to really start to use their leverage and our expertise to open doors with those people who have the role and responsibility to ensure that the NHS provides the Parkinson's community with the care that it actually needs. So I think locally we're very effective. Local groups work with our campaigns team to usually leverage a discussion with their local MP. They may get a meeting with their local hospital, and sometimes access improves. But generally, you're right, Gary, the picture is really poor across the whole of the UK. And so we have an opportunity now that we've got a huge amount of data around what is not being provided, to be able to use our voice to, if you like, speak truth to power. And what we're doing is using every opportunity that we get to do that. So I think the movers and shakers have been really helpful in terms of the fact they've been able to open doors for us. We went to the Labour Party conference this year, and we held a fringe event. Camille and myself were both on the panel, along with Shafak, and Mark Mardell chaired that. And we had the Minister of Care, Stephen Kinnock, came along. He looked very frightened in some of the photos. But we managed to have a really good conversation with him around some of the very real experiences that you've shared with us. We also met Wes Streeting and all the members of his team, and we followed that up, and we hope to be in a position where very soon we will be able to speak to them. The NHS are also just in the process of developing a 10-year plan. Lord Darcy has surprisingly looked at the NHS and surprisingly concluded that it's in a bit of a pickle. So those great brains now are looking at how that pickle can be sorted out. So every opportunity that we get as Parkinson's UK to be part of those discussions, we're now stepping forward. But again, the voice that you have in terms of your lived experience and feeding it through to us is absolutely paramount so that we can give those lived experiences back.
And Carl, how do you see that from the young onset lens and the particular requirements of young onset?
Yeah, it's a massive issue. Young onset hits us at a time when we've got kids and mortgages, a career. And often the symptoms are not recognised, which causes further problems. So it took me 2 years to get a diagnosis. And then the support systems are not there. I was actually diagnosed as diabetic at the same time as Parkinson's. And the confusion between the two disciplines was pronounced. I've still not seen a diabetic consultant 2 years on. They think I'm late onset type 1, but I'm not able to get the stuff that I need. And the Parkinson's dude and the diabetic dude don't talk to each other. So, and we know that diabetes can accelerate Parkinson's. So it's all a bit of a faff. And I'm optimistic. But we've really got to fly the flag around the young onset stuff. There are people with young onset who end up with suicidal ideation. They just feel like they've lost everything. And they don't get the help they need. In Ireland, I've got people who have not seen someone for 2 years. Yeah. It's crazy.
Agreed. Let's change tacks. I've just had a sign put up, I think.
Pump priming.
Pump priming.
I thought that was a sign saying how many minutes I go to.
No, so as my colleague,
what does that mean?
Thank you, Rowan. So as well as campaigning, one of the key strands of the work that we do at Parkinson's UK is to actually fund care in the NHS. So we funded nearly 70% of the Parkinson's nurses in the NHS, so that's about 300 nurses. So we provide an opportunity for the NHS Trust to bid. And if they're successful, we offer 2 years' worth of funding, and then we have a team that basically harangues, follows, hounds that particular trust to ensure that that funding continues once the funding from the charity stops, because we move that 2 year funding on then to another hospital. But we do know that we are at least 100 nurses short across the UK, and as Emma said, she's got a caseload of 700. It's recommended that the caseload should be around 300.
Absolutely. So
there is a massive, massive shortfall. Even when we've got nurses, they're overworked. So one of the key things that we fundraise for, and we're always very grateful for anybody that does takes part in an activity on our behalf, is because that money often goes back to the care that you actually receive, and you receive it from the NHS, but actually in some ways it's a tax on the Parkinson's community because you're paying for it too if you're doing a fundraising activity. I did deliver that message to Stephen Kinnock and he didn't take that one very well. But it's true, it's another tax.
Well, hopefully we'll keep giving him the message and he'll learn it's right. Yes, you can, yep.
We have an excellent Parkinson's nurse, absolutely outstanding.
but she can't prescribe anything, which means actually what happens is she says, yes, you should change. And 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months later, the neurologist says, okay, I think that's probably quite a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. And I have to say, my personal experience is I've got an NHS consultant who has to send any changes to my local GP, who doesn't actually know anything really about Parkinson's, who then sends it to the local chemist, who's a really good guy, but if he can get the generic rather than the branded, you get a different outcome, and it's a circle, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Emma wants to.
A circle or a circus.
Could I just
Emma.
say, so there are sort of different grades of Parkinson's nurses as well. But we really do advocate that specialist nurses do have that non-medical prescribing qualification. I've had it for about, nearly 10 years now, and it makes things so much easier. So in terms of assessing the patient, a shared decision between us on what sort of treatments we go for, and then giving you that prescription there and then reviewing it and taking responsibility. So actually I have very little to do with the consultants unless I need their opinion on something. So it just makes things a lot quicker, and then I can review it, and then once it works and you're on the right level of that medication, we can then hand over the prescription to the GP so that they regularly prescribe it then. So it does make the process of treatments and outcomes much more smoother if we can just do it in the community. And just to add to that, I think we do need more community-based Parkinson's nurses. I think traditionally the money has shifted to the right into hospitals, but we very much need it to go to the left in the community where the preventative work starts in the first place. And we can't do that when we have huge caseloads and high levels of sickness. It's got to be said, it's out there, you know, nurses are very stressed, and you know, my sort of background, as I've said, is mental health nursing, and I don't think we're very kind to our mental health nurses, our Parkinson's nurses, because of the stress we put them under. So yeah, we're very grateful for Parkinson's UK having that pump priming sort of responsibility and job that they do, and it's well, I don't think we would have a Parkinson's nurse service in this country if it wasn't for Parkinson's UK. And can I just big up, it's 35 years actually since we had the first Parkinson's nurse in this country, and we invented them in Cornwall, where I am from.
So I'll just stand up because we've got to, I've been given the warning. So I'm going to ask 2 questions, quick fire questions, and then I want to ask 1 question of each of you before we sum up. So David, what do you think about research into diet? For example, gut biome, dairy, protein or insulin resistance? Quick answer.
I think it's key, really. Already we funded a trial on Simprove, and just changing the gut bacteria with those 4 probiotics, you know, improve the response time to medication, because your bad bacteria in your gut nibble away at your tablets before they get absorbed. You know, they cause more constipation, they secrete factors which block your drugs getting across the gut. So I think it's key, really. I think we need to do more investigations, and people really need to think about their diet, the Mind diet or the Mediterranean diet. You know, eat fibrous foods.
Right, that's my magnum been out the window then. Caroline, how are Parkinson's UK collaborating with others to speed up better treatments?
So we work, I mean, I think you've seen from the work that Carmel and David have both spoken about today, that we're very comfortable and very supportive of working with other organisations, whether it's in the UK, whether that's Cure Parkinson's, or whether it is international organisations like Michael J. Fox, and also we collaborate very heavily with pharma, because without pharma, again, we won't ultimately get a partner that is going to produce a drug that will hopefully slow the progression of Parkinson's.
Thank you, Caroline. And last question to each. Could you just give me, very succinctly, one message you'd like to leave the audience with today as they go on to the next session? So I'm deliberately talking that through, so it gives you a chance to think about it. Carl.
Never quit.
Never quit. Very good. Emma?
If your Parkinson's symptoms change quickly, i.e. overnight, please get hold of either your Parkinson's nurse or your GP, because there's often an underlying infection or constipation, for example, and it's the it's the most common reason that people with Parkinson's go to hospital.
Thank you very much. Camille?
Retain sense of hope, take part in research, and keep well hydrated.
That's 3, but that's very valid.
David?
Sign up to the Research Support Network, because that will show you what exciting things are going on in research and give you all the opportunities that you can take part in research.
Thank you very much. Caroline?
Well, I'm not going to say what I think you're going to say.
Oh, you don't know what I'm going to say.
I think I know what you're going to say. So I was going to say live life, love life, and stop Parkinson's.
That's perfect. I would say live life, love life, and stop
We're on
Parkinson's.
message.
Yeah. Thank you very much. If you're, firstly, a huge thanks to the panel for answering a variety of questions, some that I put in as well, and some that I added a bit of spice to. Thank you very much for that. If you've got a question that you feel wasn't answered, or you've got one that's come out of this, please get in touch. The address is up there, and we'll try and answer the questions for you outside of this session as well. And obviously, lots of people are around over the course of this evening and tomorrow as well. I've now got the opportunity to welcome BB Heel. Have I pronounced that correctly, BB? Brilliant. And she's going to bring today's session to a close with some singing, some voice. And like my dancing, my voice should not be seen, so I'm glad that BB is here, because otherwise you'd have got us. After BB, though, we invite you to go to the second floor War Gallery and join us for a drink and some comedy from Phil Jerky as well. So thank you very much. Welcome, BB. We better get off the stage.
Yeah, you might prefer. Yeah. Oh, would you be my backing group? That would be.
I've heard her sing now.
I should rename it Songs That Clear the Room. Hello, it's a huge, huge privilege to be here and to be invited to round this off. This is something lovely, I hope, and also something useful, I hope. I run Songs That Move, which is a classical song project, songs that move both body and brain. And with pianist Stephen Barlow and producer Jane Rice Bowen, we had this idea originally just as a concert format. We perform these songs, these little 5-minute, 4-minute gems that create an incredible film, a picture in your mind, and just carry you off to somewhere else. And we thought, wouldn't that be amazing to sort of target it? So for audience members, if you could choose the subject matter, the story that I might sing about, or the mood, whether it lifts you or calms you, wouldn't that be amazing? But you can't really run a concert for one person at a time, except during COVID, when you may do almost nothing else. So we honed this idea of prescribing a song, really, for somebody's specific needs, just as a concert goer. And then through that, we discovered that for literally any demographic, for school-excluded 9-year-olds, to the Caribbean knitting group, to the Sikh community of ladies who spoke know English, let alone the French, German, Italian that I was singing in. It didn't matter, because if you explain the story first with gesture, and then you sing the song, the music helps you read between the lines, and you still become immersed in it, and your mind becomes carried away. So then we looked at the therapeutic, specifically Parkinson's-related therapeutic possibilities of really taxing your brain with a story or the text or these pictures, and then allying that to a gesture that becomes Parkinson-specific, or at least clinically relevant exercise. So we are thrilled to say that we are now building a pilot program that takes it from being a live thing like this onto a filmed thing, so that you can get it whenever you want it and it suits you. And with seed funding from Parkinson's UK and incredibly generous support from the organisation as a whole, we're working with the neuro heroes, specialist neurophysiotherapists, to make our gestures that are artistically led, imaginatively led. We're making them clinically relevant to you. And we're also working with some of the movers and shakers. In fact, our program was featured on their episode called Music in September. I don't know if you heard it. But Mark Mardell and Gillian Lacey-Solimar have been sort of willing participants, guinea pigs, if you like. Anyway, that's the basis of what we're doing. Now I'll just do it, and it'll make a lot more sense. So, but if you would like to know more, or you know somebody who might be able to donate to the crowdfunder page, Songs That Move, has got all of the information. And we would really love feedback. We are building the program with people with Parkinson's. And the pilot program that we're making of these 10 films that we're raising the money to make, we are doing it so that we can trial it and gather feedback. Tony Woods, who is heading up the Shaper program of scaling up arts and health interventions at King's College London, he's our data gatherer. So we've got incredible people on board, each one a specialist in their own field. But we welcome the feedback and the intervention from people with Parkinson's. Anyway, here's the song. This song was actually, oh, sorry, not yet. Almost the song, because each song comes with an introduction, because if you don't know the story, it makes no sense. I'm so sorry I gave you a really bum steer. This song was actually chosen as a prescription for a lady who didn't have Parkinson's. She had spinal injury, and she had suddenly had her whole life change. And in fact, she was also isolated with COVID, so I sang it in through a tiny crack in a window in the drenching rain under a gutter into her hospital room. It turned out she was from India, and this song was so perfect because it starts off. It's called Auf Flügen des Gesanges. It's by Mendelssohn. It's better known perhaps as On Wings of Song. And it starts off and says, "On the wings of this song, I will carry you to the banks of the Ganges River. And there, in the silent moonlight, is a blossoming garden. And there, the lotus flowers are slowly opening with their sweet sisters." And the second verse says, "The violets are giggling and nudging, and they stare up at the stars above. And the roses are whispering sweet scented secrets into their ears. And you can see a happy gazelle go hopping by, and then in the far off distance, the rushing of the waterfall." And the third verse says, "Come, lie down with me under these palm boughs. Drink it in and love it, and we will dream our sweetest dreams." So that's the story, and then we take some of the gestures that come naturally and build them into things that help with balance transfer or dexterity or opening out your shoulders. Gillian was swimming down through the air above the banks of the Ganges River. I'm not sure this is quite the place for us all to be doing that, but if you would like to be echoing or imagining how you might echo those movements, then please do. And now, please, may.
Dich fort nach den Fluren des Ganges, dort weiß ich den schönsten Ort. Dort liegt ein rotblühenden Garten im stillen Sonnenschein. Die Lotusblumen erwarten mit rote Schwesterlein. Die Lotusblumen
Thank you very much.